Donc, bonjour. For those who just came in, just checking it once again whether you can hear me clearly before I move on.
Miss, your voice is kind of distorted.
It's distorted.
Hello. It's muffled.
C'est pas beau.
No.
Okay. Allô?
Yes, it's better now.
Much better, mais vous entendez background noise là en ce moment?
No.
Non, il n'y a pas. OK.
No, there's no background.
Okay, so basically I have a neighbor who's a DJ actually. Donc il y a la musique à l'oreille, donc that's why I like putting my headset, mais apparemment ça ne marche pas. Donc là c'est bien mieux.
Yes.
Ok. Donc donc before we proceed, let's see, vous avez des questions? Il y a quelques questions dans le chat room. Okay, so someone who missed the lab session. Non, j'étais là, moi. Jusqu'à à peu près 3h30, I was still here and then there was no one and then I left. If I'm not mistaken, I was here on... no, I was here the full session, but then students started leaving as of 3:30, 3:45. So what's the problem? Why you couldn't join? Is it the link? Maybe you used the wrong link. Ashley, are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Actually, I joined. I waited till 15 and I joined, but it's still showing like waiting for someone to accept me in, and it kept on like this like for 20 minutes and I didn't join. So I thought there was no.
Because usually it's auto admit. So once you have the link, you should be having access. Donc, basically, what you can do, donc, si jamais vous avez, c'est pas juste pour Ashley, mais pour tout le monde ici. Donc, si jamais vous avez des problèmes, you are not able to access for whatever reason. So you can, if you can't access, then you can maybe just send a message to one of your teammates, your classmates, and then they can inform me, and then I can see what's the problem. C'est bon, Ashley? Parce que I was here, the session was open jusqu'à 4 anyway.
Okay. Actually, I had questions on the question 7, I think. So I needed to ask you, but I couldn't. Okay,
so we'll take it up today after the lecture if we have some time. Otherwise, I'm going to be there anyway for the session on Wednesday, and then we can pick up.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Welcome. Donc, what we are going to do, we are going to proceed with lecture 4 today. Where we stopped last time, let me share my screen first. So last time we had already started lecture 3. And then we stopped somewhere. Donc, s'il y a des soucis, si vous n'arrivez pas... Donc, you should be seeing my screen now. C'est bon?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, well, I'm going to start recording soon, so I will put my camera off. Before I start with lecture, is there any other issues I forgot to ask? And above all, j'ai oublié de vous dire, donc bonjour tout le monde, j'espère que vous avez passé un bon week-end. Anything that you want to raise, anything that you want, anything at all before I start the session for today? Because when I'm in recording, then the interaction will be much less. So anything you want to point out before I move on? Oui?
Miss, monsieur, we connaît si like pour ban lab sheet ça li markable parce qu'il m'a battu On
The
passe
lab sheets
la
are not
première des
going to
semaines.
be marked. No, but the lab sheets
Et-
are for you. It's your practice. Comme je sais pas moi, à l'école, quand vous faites des labs, travaux pratiques, chimie, physique, so I don't know.
Normalement, j'ai un accident, je suis à l'hôpital, soit les premiers des semaines, je passe capable en classe. Alors, ça même, je suis en reconnaissance, miss man assignment. So,
No, so no assignment. You haven't missed any assignment so far. So the first assessment will be the test, which is due. So that's going to be next year only. So right après week 5 ou 6, you can check the module catalogue.
okay, merci.
Like all the labs, they are not assessed as such. And I'm not going to check kisi kya fait, kisi kya pas fait, your adults. But basically, of course, you're strongly advised to do the lab sheets because this is what's going to help you in terms of getting practice. Par exemple, mathématiques. Donc, si vous ne faites pas assez d'exemples, you are not you are not using enough examples, then this is really going to, this will not make you ready for the module. Okay, so the lab sheets are meant for you to work them out. You can, I suggest you to have teams, you can work it out together. Maybe ensure anything, any query that you're having, we are going to check it during the lab sessions. So as of now, I'm just going to as of now, I'm going to stop the video. So as of now, I'm going to be on recorded mode. So let me just.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so as of now, you are in a recorded session. So we are going to proceed with lecture 3. So we already started with data types and expressions last week. Okay, so we have seen variables, identifiers, constants, data types. So there are a couple of things that we did not work on in the last session. So we are going to complete this. Just a quick recap. Donc la dernière fois, ce qu'on a vu, c'est par exemple, this is a C++ program. For those who just came in, who missed classes for some reason, so you have to go and check again week 1 and 2 in terms of the different stages before we actually come up with a program. So unfortunately, I cannot pick up the whole lecture each time, but I can just drive you through. You can go and try to do self-learning. Et bien sûr, si vous avez des soucis à ce moment-là, dans le lab session, I can help you. Donc, what you have to do, first of all, there is any problem, you have to first of all see how to design the design stage, whereby you have to write it in words, for instance, in the pseudocode or the flowchart. Once you have designed it, then only comes this stage where we are actually going to write the program in C++. Donc, comme on a vu la dernière fois, in lab sheet 1, this gives you an indication in terms of, it shows you the different stages. First of all, how to download the software, from where to download it, and how to create your first C++ program. So once your first C++ program is created, it looks something similar to this, whereby you have the different, you have int main, namespace, std, and so on. And then you have some codes out there which says hello world. And then basically from there, you can update your program. As good programming practice, I already talked about it. So don't put all the programs in the same main file by just commenting and uncommenting, but create separate projects. So separate projects, but before you create your project, you should already create a folder where, because when you start your project, you have to specify in which folder you are going to save this program. Okay. So coming back to this example, our C++ code. So within your int main, you have x, which is an identifier. An identifier in this case here, the identifier is a variable which can hold values of type integer. Let me check whether I can put my. So here x is a variable and x can hold values of type integer. Then we have constants. So constants are going to be fixed values. For example, 515 constants. So this is being accumulated. So then whatever value accumulated is being stored in the value x, and then we are printing x somewhere. Recap cout is for printing. Then you have these two arrows, which is a delimiter separating different types of values. Within the two codes here, you have a text, and you can basically type in any text that you want. And finally, you have the value itself, which you want to display x. Note that x here is without the double quotes, which means that is the value of x. So in this case, 515, which is going to be printed, and not x itself. So this we have seen last time. So from time to time, I will be doing recap, because this is when you learn something, usually you have to go through it 4 times before you can actually capture. So the first time you're going through it, you start absorbing very little. The second time you start understanding. The third time you start mastering, and the fourth time basically that's going to be usually an exam, an assessment, where you actually see whether you can master that particular topic or not. So that's why you will see that as I proceed, even if there are topics which have already been covered, I'm going to repeat myself again, not because I want to repeat, but because this is going to help you in your understanding. Donc, on vient de voir c'est quoi variables and constant. This we have seen last time. So I'm just going through this. Yes, so in terms of identifier, you cannot just give any name to an identifier. There are specific names which you can give to an identifier, okay? And the valid names are going to be, for instance, it has to start with a letter or an underscore. There can be numbers, digits, but that has to be after the letter or the underscore. You cannot have other things like space or special characters in your identifier name. So these are, for instance, keywords, reserved words in the language, in the grammar, in the syntax of the language. Syntax and grammar is the same thing. So basically, when we are talking about syntax of the language, we are talking about what grammar is allowed in that language. Just like when we talk French, English, German, whatever the language it is, so you have specific words which are going to be allowed in that particular dictionary. Donc, same thing here. For instance, if you have the word auto, you cannot use it as an identifier because auto has a specific function. Just like we have seen cout, cin, int, long, short, return, these names cannot be used for variables or identifiers. So we have seen some of the legal and illegal. Just to note here, for instance, 3D graph is illegal because it cannot start with a digit. This one is also illegal because there is a special character, there is the hash here, which cannot be taken for an identifier. Declaration of variables in ABC. So instead of having to declare variables of the same type on different lines, you can just have it on the same line separated with a comma. And then each sentence, each statement in your C++ ends with a semicolon. So I'm just doing quick recap. Constants. So where do we use constants? For instance, you have a value, maximum, minimum. In this example, we have pi, for instance. So you have pi here, which is a constant that we are using because you are not expecting the value of pi to change. Then whenever you are going to use this value, you just have to use the name pi, the constant name pi, instead of the value itself, 3.14, etc. Data types, we have seen that there are different data types. So there is another, okay, let's go back. There are different types of data. We have seen char, we have seen int, float, double so far. Boolean we are going to see today. So just to tell you that depending on the type of variable that I want to hold and depending on the type of precision that I need, then I will be looking for that particular variable type. For instance, if I'm storing an integer, it can be used just using int, but if I need more precision, then I won't use int, I will use long. Same thing for a floating point number, decimal. So if I need more precision, then I will be using double. And as you can see here, the number of bytes is higher. So there are arithmetic operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Note that for multiplication is the star, for division is this backslash. We also talked about the modulus operator on top of the 4 basic arithmetic operations. The modulus operator, which basically gives you the remainder when you take a value divided by something. We have also seen last time the precedence of arithmetic operators. So which one has precedence of others? So just like if you have a mathematical formula which is going to be applied and you haven't really made use of brackets, then you would be using BODMAS. So here this is the order of precedence. So which one has higher priority over the other? So to be on the safe side, it's better. So if you want something to be computed first, you use your brackets whenever it should be. So we stopped somewhere here last time in terms of increment and decrement operators. So I did not want to rush too much so that this gives you time to absorb as well. So increment operator is basically when we are saying the value is going to be increased by 1, it could be increased by more than 1 as well. And decrement operator is where we can decrease the value by 1. So this is a shorthand format for saying increment or decrement value. For instance, here we have x as the value 10, y as the value 15. Both an x node have been defined as integer variable, so it's only whole numbers, int. And then, so we are printing the value of x and y. That's the first 2 statements out here, 10 and 15. And then we are applying increment and decrement. So x plus plus is similar to saying x equals to x plus 1. Y minus minus is similar to saying y equals to y minus 1. So now we have, after incrementing and decrementing, so there should be 9, 11 and 14 as displayed here. So these are the 2 statements which are showing the incremented value and the decremented value. Note I have put callouts you will see on different screens to show you that in the examples which are there, not all of them are having proper naming conventions. So in your program, in the tests, for as there are no exams for this module, so I repeat, this module is 100% coursework. So you have in all 4 tests, 2 in semester 1, 2 in semester 2, plus you also have an assignment which will be due for semester 2. And that assignment is about creating a game in 2D or 3D. Donc, coming back to this one, so here we are not using naming conventions, but for your test, if it says, if it indicates that you have to use proper use of naming conventions or good programming principles, then you have to use good names, naming convention. For instance, I num1 for instead of x. And then you also have to make use of comments whenever possible. So you are also not going to flood your program with just lots of comments, but it has to be used at least for big fragments of code to explain what they are. Okay, so now for the increment and decrement operators, it has an impact on whether it is before, like this, plus b, or whether it is after the variable. So because this is going to have an impact on the value. So when we say when it's prefix, like here, plus b, it means that it's going to increment the value of b first, and then so assign the incremented the value of b to a. Compared to this one, it will take the current value of b, which is free, assign it to a, and then only increment the value of b. Okay, so that's what it talks about here, on whether it's going to be increased after or before the expression is evaluated. So you have to be very careful. If it's just x plus x, just like that, without any assignment statement, then it's you don't really have to worry much about it. But if it's in a cout statement or if it's in an assignment statement, then you have to be very careful in terms of whether the increment or decrement comes before or after. So we take another example here. So here we have the value of x, 10, 15 again. We are saying display the value of x. The value of x is x. So it will display first 10, and then only it will increment the value of x to 11. So if you had a statement here somewhere which says cout x just before the return 0, now it would have printed 11 because now it has been incremented. Same thing for y, it's decremented afterwards. So it will display first the current value 15 and then decrement it afterwards. So be very careful. Compared to this one, whereby it's incremented first, decremented first, and then so it's incremented before the expression is evaluated. So that because of this, you have the incremented value 11 and 14, which are displayed. Okay, so before I move on, is there any question?
No.
No.
No question.
No.
Okay. So I move on then with integer division now. Last time, some of you, when you did your lab session, you were telling me the value being displayed is not correct. So I'm not sure whether it was because of this reason, but you have to be very careful when you do division. In general, when you are going to apply division, you have to ensure that at least one of the values are a floating value to ensure that when you're dividing, if there is a decimal part, there is a floating part, you are also storing that value. If all your variables are integer variables, it will just ignore the decimal part completely because it's not integer variables are not meant to store decimal numbers. Okay, so the floating point numbers will not be there. So be very careful when you are making use of the division operator. So for instance, here I have y equals to 7.0. So I have basically converted the value 7 to its floating number 7.0 divided by 5, then I will get 1.4. Compared to the other one, since y is an integer, I'm saying integer equals to integer divided by integer, the value is still going to be an integer. So it will just skip completely the 0.4, it will just display 1. So be very careful. We are going to see a couple of examples now, just to make sure you have understood how to make use of division. So in this example, we have value 1, value 2, which are all integer numbers. Sum is also integer. And then somewhere down, I'm doing is divnum. So where here it is, divnum equals to sum divided by 2. Note that here divnum is a floating point number. However, sum in itself is integer. 2 is an integer. So it will give you the integer part only. So if it's, for example, integer value 4, so it will, if the answer is supposed to be 4.5, then it will, here it will already skip the 0.5, it will give you 4. And as answer then, since divnum is a float, it can give you something like 4.0. So be very careful. So how do we solve this problem? So here again, same question. You have int, value 1, value 2 sum. Divnum is a float. However, when you're doing the division, you're making sure that at least one of the values is a float. So sum is going to be an integer, but instead of just putting 2, we are putting 2.0 to indicate that this is a floating point number. So integer divided by float, the answer will be in float, and you can, divnum is a float, so divnum can store the float number, which is here in this scenario 26.5 instead of the previous one which just showed 26 because the decimal part was completely skipped out. Okay, so here is just a couple of more examples to show you how to make use of different types of data. So we have int x, y, z1, float a1, a2, a3, and then we have, you have to say what is going to be output based on the inputs that we have down there. So for instance, z1 is going to be y 45 divided by 20. Note that z1 is an integer. X and y also integers, so you just get 2. You will not get the decimal part. Now a2. What is a2? So a1 is 22, but a1 is a float. a2 equals to, which is a float, equals to a1, which is a float, divided by x, which is an integer. So you will get it in floating point number and stored in a2, which is 1.1. Okay, and a3 now. a3, we are saying a3 is a float. However, x and y are both integers. So integer divided by integer equals to integer, so it will skip completely. Donc, c'est 45 divisé par 20, we don't have the decimal part, even if a3 is a float. So I hope this is clear how to make use of float, and so when you have division, how you should ensure that at least one of the values is a float. Now, in some scenarios, what you can do, you can just apply casting, which is a method of converting one type to another. For instance, you can convert a float to an integer to a float, a character to a number, and so on. So how you do that? For instance, here you have y, which could be a float. You say float of x. So if x is an integer, the float of x would have converted the value of x. If x is 5, it will be 5.0 and then stored in y. Okay, so you just have to precede it with the type that you want to convert it to. So when it's just numbers, integer, float, it's quite straightforward, but be very careful. There are some examples later on that we are going to see where you can apply casting, for instance, for integer and char. So convert from char to integer or integer to char. I'm not sure we have this today, but this is at some instances we are going to explore that. The associativity now of arithmetic operators. So we have here negation operator, which is going to be right to left. So if you have negative 4, it will start from the right 4 and then apply the negation operator to it, unary, operator to it. And then you have left to right. So if you have multiplication, division, modulus, addition, subtraction, it will be left to right. So if I say x divided by 3, it takes x first and then divided by 3, and then it will take the part for 3. Okay. Okay, combine assignments now, assignment operators. So we have seen how to do x plus plus, x minus minus, plus plus x, and so on. So here how to shorthand formats for saying, for instance, if I want to say x equals to x plus 5, instead of just writing it this way, I will say x plus equals to 5. So this is true not only for the addition operator, but also for subtraction, multiplication, division, and also the modulus operator. Okay, so these are just shorthand formats for writing the same thing. So if you're not comfortable in using in this format in your programs, you can still stick to the normal equivalent part. However, you should be able to interpret these types of values. For instance, in a test question, you could be having a calculation which includes 1 or 2 of these. And then if you don't know how to apply it, then your answer is going to be wrong. Data types, we have seen all this. So several integers. So this is just showing to you that within the same program, you can have different types of integers. So here we have int, unsigned, int, long. Okay, just an example. These are some of the examples that we have already seen in class. So I'm just going to go quickly through them. So here, assign values 15, 20, and to the variables I mark 1, I mark 2, and output basically the sum. So here we have I mark 1, I mark 2, and sum defined as integers. We are going to, first of all, output the values I mark 1 and I mark 2, and then we are displaying it. Note, in this program, we just have, we don't have any input. We have the constants which have already been assigned to the variables. We have a part for computation, the processing part for calculating the sum, and all this down here is for the output part. See out, see out, see out. All this is output. What? This text followed by the value, and the value computed for sum. Same thing, which is asking you to do the same thing for product, but I have gone even further. In the lab, we have already seen how to do input and all that. So there's also in terms of precision. So how many significant figures that you want. So you can have single precision, float, double, long. Okay, so this is again data type. There's another thing I hope it's down there somewhere in terms of set precision. So now we are talking now about forget about the set precision I just mentioned, sorry for that. So let's focus on the char data type first of all. So here we are having a char data type. As a reminder, char data type, I can store any keyboard printable character. So this includes not only letters, don't lose away letters, numbers, plus any keyboard printable character, which includes the space, the semicolon, the full stop, the hash sign, and so on. So in this example, basic example of how to make use of char, it was also there in one of the labs, if I'm not mistaken, or lecture 2. So we have defined char letter, and we have assigned the value A to letter. Note that now, since letter is not, it's not a number, when we are assigning the value letter equals to A has to be between quote, because now this is a character. We do same thing for B, and then we are just displaying. So here it will display A, here it will display B. The other type of variable that we also have Boolean variables. So what are Boolean variables? Boolean variables can hold values of two states only, say 0 or 1, on or off. Okay, so basically it's like a switch. So whether it's on or whether it's off, so you can use for these kind of scenarios, true, false, you can make use of the Boolean variable data type. So how to define it? You have bool value. Bool value is the variable name. Bool is the data type, just like we saw int, float, double. Bool is the data type. So when we say true, true is a reserved word. True means 1. False means 0. So if you assign true to bool value, the value printed will be 1. So this is why you have 1 here. If you assign false, the value printed will be 0. So true and false cannot be used as variable names because these are keywords which represent something in C++. So in summary, this is basically what we have seen. We have seen variables, constant, identifiers, data type, and arithmetic operators in this lecture. So with this, I'm just going to stop recording.
Recording stopped.
Okay, so with this, I'm done with lecture 3. Now we see if we have any questions. So let me see now in the chat room what we have, whether we have any questions first. Okay, so we have, so it's, let me just put a comment first and then I take your question, Hashim. So it's normal for the first 2 or 3 weeks to have students, for instance, shifting from one course to another or latecomers. So please try, I cannot redo the whole syllabus, but for sure I'm here to help you out. So the first one, lecture 1, lecture 2, it's quite basic. You have the labs, lecture 1, lecture 2. So please go through the lecture, try to attend the lab. especially lab 1 is very, very basic. It's just installation and trying the first program. So go through them, try it, et bien sûr, si vous avez des problèmes, I'm here to support you during the lab session. Allez, oui, Hashim, you had a question.
Miss, je suis connaître qui software on recommande pour servir pour faire un coding là, code blocks ou bien les autres.
Are you-
Eclipse, voilà.
Are you new?
I like qui man software pour servir pour
No, so for the moment, we are just focusing on code blocks.
code
But as
blocks.
we move on, then we might be having other software that we are going to use. Mais pour le moment, c'est seulement code blocks.
Ok, merci.
Ok, mais bien sûr, il y a certains qui ont déjà, par exemple, Visual Studio, etc. So Visual Studio, Dev Studio, you can still use it, no problem. But why I recommend code blocks? Because it's lightweight, okay, and it's more stable compared to Visual C++, which sometimes crashes and all that. So over the years, I've seen that code blocks is plus facile for students who are having the first interaction with C++. That's why I recommend C++. Mais si vous avez d'autres outils déjà for writing a C++ program, that's okay, that's fine for me. Deuxièmement, en termes de what are the tools, technologies which you're going to be exposed on in this module. Donc, premièrement, the whole first semester, that's only code blocks. Okay, donc C++ only. Then second semester, we are still doing C++, but we are also going to introduce Python. Donc, à ce moment-là, vous aurez installé Python, etc. And then, so that's 2 languages already. But then you have your assignment. So for your assignment now, we don't put any restriction. I will try to give you the assignment by next week before we actually go on break, because next week is the last session for this year. As you are aware, we are having only 4 sessions, the first 4 lectures and labs in 2021. Then we will continue in 2022 January. That's as of the 10th of January, if I'm not mistaken, as per the calendar of activities. So before we go on, before you go on vacation, I will already send you the assignment. It's just that I already had the assignment for last year. So I just wanted to bring some updates. It's on my list. So I completed for another module today. So I will try to complete for this one as well. This week, I send it to you by end of the week, and then next week during our lab, or if I have some time, I can even, so let me just write it down. So if I have some time, I will already at least give you the draft version this week during the lab session. So I have sent it to you prior to the lab session. You've gone through it, and then we can discuss about queries in the lab session. OK, maintenant, pour le assignment, qu'est-ce que vous avez à faire, grosso modo? Donc, vous avez à faire un game, 2D or 3D game, just to give you some ideas. So, people have been doing, je sais pas moi, adventure, zombie attack, je sais pas moi, egg catcher, ABCD learning, toddlers learning different types of things like shapes, numbers, colors, and so on. So it all depends on you. Et en termes de platform, this is fully up to you. We don't put any restrictions. As per what we have seen, so I have already done this for 4 times already, where students have been writing, and they do fantastic job, because there are lots of libraries available where you can develop your program. And there are already lots of assets available in terms of when you do 3D, for instance, you don't have to create the different items. For instance, if I'm doing a car race, I don't have to create the car is there. I just have to be able to pick up the car. I have to create the environment where the car is going to go through, and I need to be able to apply logic to it to ensure that it doesn't collide, to ensure that it doesn't, I don't know, let's say you are doing, 2 years back, there was one student who did something interesting in the context of Mauritius for driving tests. So if you want to apply the code de la route, for instance, if you're going for a driving test, then there will be logic that you will have to apply to it. So just for your information, most students have been using Unity as the development platform, the gaming development platform, and Unity, the language for Unity is C#, and C# is event-based programming. Okay, so students are able to pick up. So of course, you're going to struggle a bit the first 1 or 2 weeks when you start learning Unity, but there are lots of resources available. And as tertiary students, you are encouraged to do lots of self-learning. So it's not only what we do in class, but also how you're able to manage in terms of other technologies or the platforms. So yeah, Unity for the game that you can use where the programming language is C#, but some students have also been using Unreal. Okay, so it's up to you. Okay, so we don't put any restrictions in there. And I had 2-3 years back a student who did something which was just completely different in terms of what others did. So that was kind of simulating something a bit related to blockchain and all that. So, but that was more like a final year project. The thing is that I just want to, and he did score really among the mark, donc il n'a pas eu 100%, but it was very difficult to remove his, kind of deduct his marks from the different components because he did well above expectation for this module. So I'm just telling you that, telling you this to show you that, okay, we don't put any limits in terms of what kind of game you want to implement, but we are aware that you are first year students and we are not expecting a game which is like you would have done it for your final year. The aim is for you to be able to see, to explore different platforms and able to apply your programming skills that you have learned so far. Donc ça, c'était un petit peu en termes de assessment components. Any question before we move on? So the second part, what I'm going to do, I'm going to proceed with decision structure. But before we move on, let's see if there are any further questions in the chat.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, will we have will we have specifications about the game, like what features, like things that must be included in the game, like I
No,
don't know.
so it won't be specifications per game. It will be general specifications. Like for instance, what are the expectations on which assessment, what will be the assessment criteria, and also we give you the sample report structure in terms of what are the elements that we expect to be there. For instance, you have to do first of all a background study, you have to analyze the components of the game, what should be there. There should be the design of the game in terms of its user interface, logic. Then there is a part where you have to show the implementation part, what you have done, the testing and all that. So we don't really put in terms of, because this will be really dependent on each game. What we do tell you, however, is that your assessment will be based on the degree of complexity that you are able to show in your game. So in your game, for instance, if you show one feature and you just replicate it 10 times, so it's still more or less the same complexity. So you don't really get additional marks for it, compared to another student who has, because we are not necessarily expecting a full-fledged game, but you have to be able to show us that you have been able to come up with different levels of complexity. For instance, in your game, there are different levels. In each level, there is a different type of assessment. There is a different type of grading or scoring scheme that you have, which increases the challenge of the game, but also alongside, which also adds up in terms of the logic that you have to create. So feel free to add, for instance, AI features, I don't know. So you have lots, when we talk about AI now, you have lots of APIs available which you can connect to your game to add on some, not very extensive part, but at least the basic parts of AI, for instance. So feel free to add that. I hope this answers your question. Yes, so you have, so there is a good question now in terms of, wait, so is for all lectures, yes. So this year, next week is the last lecture activity tutorial week for all modules. So after next week, then you still have a student activity week. So that's probably going to be communicated to you via the student union if they have organized any activities, virtual events, and so on. But lectures are supposed to, so we are not allowed to do lectures after, so that's when, let me just tell you the date. So after the 11th of December, we are not allowed to do lecture lab tutorials. And we had another question now in terms of what about simple game like OX? OX is not a simple game. So when you code it, you will realize that there are levels of complexity added to it. So you can still add OX. But at the same time, so when we talk about Unity, if you go online, you check, there will be lots of existing games, full-fledged games available, for instance, on Unity. So now I don't stop you from using existing codes, existing games, but you should be able to tell me which part you have added to it. Okay. So because I know I have been assessing games for the last 3-4 years, so I know what's there, what's available, what's not available. For instance, I take something related to AR, augmented reality. So there is a typical example usually what students do, where you have the dot and you can flash it that you can project, for instance, anywhere around in a particular room. But this is not you creating the codes, this is already there, so you can use it, no problem, but you have to show me what is the level of added logic you have added to it, how you have customized it as per your needs, and so on. So you can't just take something which is already there and just claim that this is yours and you get all the marks, because don't forget there's also going to be like a Viva, where you will have a question answer session where you have to convince us that you have done it. And even if you have picked up assets and existing APIs and existing logic, whatever it is, you know what they are for, you have acknowledged it, and you have extended over it. Do we get to choose our team members, or will the assignment be in groups? Basically, I just have to, usually we have teams of 2 to 3. So I will just confirm this. That's because your tutor semester 2 is going to be someone else. So if it's teams like 4 to 5, then it will be the same thing. Same, you can pick up the same team as in what we have in communication skills. Otherwise, if it's going to be like we have teams of 2 to 3 only, then it's on you. As far as possible, I don't want to have individual projects. I know some students, they really want to work just on their own. They don't want to team up, but you're not helping out yourself. So you can be very good technically, but if you're not ready to work in teams, then there will be something lacking in terms of your skill sets. Donc ça c'est en termes de team. I will try to finalize all this week. So before we go, before next week, I will communicate all this to you. Any laptop recommendations to use for the free year? Any laptop recommendation? No, I don't give. I don't have any special recommendations, but in general, since you're IT student, it's good to have something whereby you, in terms of, for instance, in terms of RAM, you have at least 8 to 16. Why? Because as you move on, if you require more in terms of processing, in terms of in-memory, in terms of using AI features, then it's going to be in terms of your processor and resources RAM. So this might be a problem. Okay, so know that you're IT students. So you're not expected to be using technology just for office tools. So you will be expected to install different types of software. So in terms of processing capability and memory, it should be good enough for you to manage. So for the moment, I would recommend 16, minimum 16 for your RAM, and automatically then you will have the relevant processor accompanied with that. So there will be no exams this year for all courses. No, there is no exams this year. You're all on yearly module. So your exams will be after semester 2. What you will have in between is coursework, test, assignments, presentation, depending on the module. So you have to check your module catalog. Your exams is after semester 2. So go and check your calendar of activities. It does tell you when, what is the period as per what it is currently. When is the period for exams? I can just, if you want, I can just quickly, let me have a look. I'm just checking the calendar of activities. So I can tell you exactly when is your exams going to be as the plan now. As you know, with COVID, everything can change, but as per what it is now, if they have put for semester 2. So it's semester 1. So your semester 1 is basically ending around end of February. So semester 1 ends around end of February. And then do we have for SEM 2? Yes, we have for SEM 2. So your SEM 2 starts April. So end of February, SEM 1 ends. SEM 2 starts end of April and finishes around end of July. And then you have exams is August 2022. So your exams are only due in August 2022. Can we do a quiz? Can we do a quiz for the game? Yes, you can. So I'm not putting what about group. I have already informed you. What about GitHub? What does GitHub? And this is used for the games too. GitHub is basically how you want to manage your programs. Okay, so if you want to manage your programs in the cloud, for instance, then you can make use of GitHub. 6 GB RAM. Even if you have 8, it will still work. But I'm just thinking because you asked me for the 3 years ahead. I'm thinking more in terms of your final year project, which usually could be resource greedy. That's why if you haven't already bought a laptop and you can afford for a 16 GB, then go for it. When will we have the first test then? You mean for this module? That's going to be next year only. Because we are having only 4 weeks this semester. Those who have gaming PC would benefit, yes, definitely. So PC will hit a lot. Okay, so that was with regards to your specs and all that. So it all depends, but as IT students in general, it's better that you're equipped with a very good processor and RAM to be able to accommodate for not only for this module, you don't really need a 16 GB RAM, for instance, but for other modules, except when you are doing, depending on the game that you are doing and whether you really require something very powerful out there. Okay, so we are going to stop for a few minutes. So 11. So it's 12:30 as per my clock. We just stop for 5 minutes. The 5 minutes we are going to proceed with lecture 4 for ethanol. So I just want to ensure that you're again back with me. So if you need to go to the washroom and all that, please do that. And we meet in 5 minutes. Donc ça va être à 12:35. In the meantime, if you have more questions, do not hesitate to type them in the chat room. Donc see you in 5 minutes. In the meantime, stretch your legs, do some jumping jacks, I don't know, go to the washroom, and then you're back with me in 5 minutes. Allez, see you.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, see. So I'm going to proceed with the second part of our lecture today. So I'm going to put on recording mode again.
Recording in progress.
I hope the background music is not disturbing you. Vous arrivez à m'entendre, vous êtes?
Oui.
Oui.
C'est bon? Ok, merci. I'm going to share my screen in a few minutes. So it's there. So as of now, we are again in a recorded session. We are going to proceed with lecture, the next part of it, which is on decision structures. As you can see, this part is basically for lecture 4 and 5. Okay, so we'll see. So if we are not able to complete today, we'll be completing it on next week. But we already started part of it during our lab session on lab session last week, last Wednesday. Okay, so basically this is the agenda for today, where we are going to talk with relational operators, what they are, what is simple decision, two-way decision, multi-way decision, and also trace tables. So first of all, in terms of relational operators, so when we talk about relational operators, so these are things that you have seen: greater than, less than, greater than or equal to. But note that for when we are using greater than or equal to and less than or equal to, it's not as per the notation that you use as the mathematical notation. So you have to put the greater sign, and then you have to put the equal. The same for less than or equal to, you have to put the less than and then the equal to sign. So, and the double equal sign is basically when you're having to compare. So if I have two values that I need to compare, then it will be the double equal sign. For example, I have A, which is value 3, and B, which is value 4. I want to compare whether the value of A equals to the value of B. I will say A double equal B. And the last one, this is for not equal to. So this is the symbol for not equal to when you are using C++. Okay, so this is just what I explained in terms of the double equal sign. So if you have just one single equal sign, just like we have been doing before, x equals to 5, y equals to 3, and so on, that's an assignment statement. If you have double equal sign, that's going to be for checking for equality, checking for similarity. Okay, so we have some statements that include relational operators, just to show you where to use them. So before we move on to branching instructions, which are basically if then else, we just have a couple of statements out here to show you in which scenarios we are going to use them. For example, when we have z equals to x less than y, this we are saying that z, which is an integer or a Boolean value, it's going to hold the value which you're going to get when you do this comparison. So x less than y will give you either the value true or the value false. Is x less than y? This is what we are saying. So if it's true, then 1 is going to be assigned to z, because as we saw earlier, true has the value 1 And if it's 0, then false, that's false for the value of z. So like this, we have different statements. We can try to print the value, whether it's true or not. So here we are saying CR, print what? Whether x is greater than y. So is x greater than y? In this example, 10 and 7, yes, x is greater than y. So it will be displaying the value of 1, which stands for true. Just give me a second. Okay, so we move on now. For instance, let's see this one, z equals to y not equal to x. So here it is y not equal to x. Y has the value 7, x has the value 10. So y not equal to x, this is true. So y is not equal to x, so z is therefore going to have the value 1. So I haven't took for all of them, I took some of the examples to show you why the different values, why these different values 0 or 1 are being displayed. The precedence of relational operators now. So you have precedence of relational operator, highest to lowest. So greater than or equal to, less than or equal to will have higher precedence over checking for equality or not equal. So assume if you have these values 5, 6, and 8 for x, y, z, indicate whether each of the following will return true or false. So x equals to 5. Is x equal to 5? This will be returning true. And then same thing you can then do for the others. So now we are saying is 7 less than or equal to the value of x plus 2. So x is 5 plus 2, which is 7. Is 7 less than or equal to 7? Yes, it's true. So like this you can do for the others. Let's take one which is not equal. Is z not equal to 4? Z has the value 8, not equal to 4. So this will also return true. And note that when you have brackets and all that, the order of precedence, if you have a computation, so you have to apply all of them just like we have seen before. So you have to see the level of precedence for the different mathematical operators, addition, subtraction, and so on, bracket, then how to make use of bracket. Plus, there is also the precedence in terms of the relational operators, like we just saw in the previous slide here. Okay, so having explored some of these concepts, which we are going to use in branching instructions, so now we move on to simple decision. So simple this is just to tell you that you don't have in all scenarios where your statements are just going to be executed as a sequence of events. In some scenarios, you might have to choose, for instance, between one path or the other. So this is where conditional structures, or as we call them, if then else, comes into picture. So let's consider this problem. Draw the flowchart, write the program to calculate the salary of the person. This is an example we saw in week 1 and 2. So you know the number of days and you know the rate per hour. You have to calculate the salary. So here we don't have any decision involved. We just have these two inputs. We do the computation and we output the salary. So does this involve any decision? No. In this one, it's just a sequence of logical statements that you are writing. This same example updated with some further instructions. So here we are saying if the number of days is less than 1, then your program should display an error message. So here we are applying a validation. If the number of days is less than 1, it's not worth calculating the salary, it doesn't make sense, then we have to display an error message and probably stop the program. So does this problem involve decision making now? Yes. So we are checking if number of days is less than 1, we display error message, we stop the program. If the number of days is greater than or equal to 1, then we calculate salary and we display the salary. So here we have a decision. We can have two different paths that we are going to follow. So this is where we get into the construct. That is where we are going to use if statements. So now those who were here last week, hopefully you realize now why I already started at least one example of if then else. So this hopefully is going to make it easier now for you to see the construct when I proceed with the explanation. So basically when we have a condition, we use an if, whether it's in pseudocode or in C++, it's still if. So we have if, then we have a condition. If this condition is true, then we can execute one statement or a block of statements. That's why it says statement or statements. So the semantics of if statement in C++, now we are going to see that in a few minutes. But let's consider this example first. So a student is asked to input his marks. If it's above 40, he passes. If it's below 40, he fails. So you're asked to write the pseudocode and then we should display pass or fail depending on the score. So here's the pseudocode. We input the marks, then we check whether the marks is greater than or equal to 40, we output pass. If it's less than 40, we output fail. Note that this is a pseudocode. There is no syntax which is going to be applied in pseudocode. It's just plain English statements written in a logical order. If we consider now the same thing being written in C++, so the syntax for C++, we have if. Within these brackets here, we are going to put our condition, for example, x greater than or equal to 40. Then we have our block of statements and they are within these braces. Okay. And note that for each statement, the same rule applies. We have a semicolon just after each statement, excluding the condition. With the condition, we don't have any semicolon. And not to confuse, when to make use of equal and double equal. So in a condition, if you are checking for similarity, it will not be, for instance, x equal to 40, just one equal sign. It will be x double equal to 40, comparing the value of x with 40. So we are going to see some examples now. So this is the same example that we saw with the pseudocode. Marks greater than 40 output pass, less than 40 output fail. There is some problem with the indentation. So for instance, this yard should be aligned with this one. It should have been here. So I have put dot 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 here to show to you that there are other parts of the code which are missing. We haven't put the full program here. We're just putting the main part, int main part, the function. So we have defined marks which is going to be inputs in marks. Some instructions are missing. So when you write this program, for instance, you would also include a cout statement here, cout, enter mark for student. Then we are having our if statement, if condition, this is our condition between these two brackets, is mark greater than or equal to 40. If this is true, then what do we do? So these braces represent the then part. So everything which is out there will be executed only if the condition out here is true. So if the mark is 40, it will be executed. If it's 40, 41, 42, 60, it will still be executed. If the marks becomes 39, 37, 38, and so on, then it will not be executed. So it will completely ignore this part. So it will check here, is marks greater than or equal to 40? I assume the mark is 38. So this is not true. So it will skip this part. Then it will go to the next statement and see whether it's true. So this statement now is saying, is mark less than 40? Yes, in our context, we said we input 38. So it's less than 40, then it will print fail. So this is an example of how to make use of simple decision structure. So we have two constructs for if. In the lab, I already showed you two ways. So instead of having the if again here, we just replace this part with the else part that we are going to see in a few minutes. So example now, so cross exercise. So this you can do on your own. So a man's teaches at most 100 pieces of garments a day. And then if this is the case, he gets at the rate of 20 rupees per government. But if it's more than 100 pieces, then the rate increases to 35. So write the pseudocode flowchart C++ program for this. So basically you have to input the government, the number of governments, and if it's greater than, if it's less than or equal to 100, the rate applied will be 20. If it's greater than 100, the rate applied will be 35, and you have to display the total amount of money for that has to be computed. Okay, so now moving on, two-way decisions. Donc, the same example with the score being less than 40 or greater than or equal to 40. Let's see how to make use of else instead of two different if statements. So here, the syntax is the if condition one or block statement, else one or a block of statements. In terms of C++ now, so this is a pseudocode. If mark greater than or equal to 40 output pass, otherwise else for any other sequence output fail. So for the flowchart now, note, you will have to make use of the decision box. Okay, so the decision box, which where you're going to check for the marks whether it's greater than or less than 40. So this is the condition. So if I have a certain condition here, if it's true, I'm going to output one, I'm going to execute one or a block of statements. Otherwise, I'm going to execute another block of statements and then I continue. So this is the syntax, if condition, statements, else statements. Note that with if you have the condition between brackets, in the else part, there is no condition because this is for just for any other case. So the same example now, if marks is greater than or equal to 40, see out pass, else see out fail. So else no condition, see out fail, again we have the semicolon. Okay, so let's see if there are any questions. Okay, I'm going to first. Okay, so I try to slow it down. So let's see another example now. So in this scenario, we have three different numbers, num1, num2, and quotient, which have been defined as double. So now in this scenario, what we want to do, enter a number 1, enter number 2, and then we want to check and perform division on only when number 2 is not equal to 0. So if number 2 equals to 0, note the use of double equal sign. What we are going to do, we are going to say, okay, division by 0 not possible, enter another number. Otherwise, only if number 2, because that's the denominator, should not be 0 for me to be able to do a division. So only when it's not equal to 0, then I'm doing the computation for the division and I'm going to output it. Note once again, if condition, then open bracket, close bracket, else, what do we want to do? So whatever in the else part here will be within these two curly brackets. Okay, this part will be executed. Okay, so again the same example. So we have he's paid at the rate of 35. Write down the pseudocode or don't. Here we have to make use of if and else. This was just to show you. So you have the same example. In the previous one, the else part was not introduced. Now in the introduction of the else part, you don't have to do if construct. You will have an if number of governments is less than or equal to 100, then apply the rate 20. Else apply the rate 35. Multi-way decision now. I want to at least compute, I want to at least explain the else if part. Then we are going to stop and maybe work out one or two examples just to ensure that everyone understands how to make use of if then else. So so far we have seen if, condition, and then else. So we have seen just two ways. If it's true, do this, otherwise do that particular statement. In real life scenarios, we can have more than one branch that we might have to select. For instance, if we consider you as students, you're grading for a particular module, for instance, it's not only pass or fail, it can be further graded in terms of whether you're having A plus, B, C, D, and then fail. So then you have different else if, which are going to check for those different ranges. So let's see the example now. So here we have a question where the score, so if it's greater than or equal to 70, you get grade A. If it's below 70 but greater than or equal to 40, you get grade B. If it's less than 40, you get grade F. Note that for you as UM students, this is not applicable. You don't only just get A, B, and F. There's A, B, C, D, and F. Okay, so this is just for explanation purposes. We have used this as an example. So this is the scenario. You input the student marks. If it's above or equal to 70, you get grade A. Else, if it's above or equal to 40 and less than 70. Note that if we have already checked for above or equal to 70, here if it didn't go in this path, it implicitly means that the grade is less than 70. So if it's already, we know that it's already less than 70, then in this one, we don't have to check for less than 70 again. We don't have to check for the range, just greater than or equal to 40. Then output B, and otherwise, so it means that it's not less than 40, it's less than 70, it's less than 40, then automatically go in the else part and output grade F. So in terms of the construct now, so this is how your pseudocode is going to be. If condition 1 is true, do these statements, else you will do further checks for condition 2, condition 3. If you can see, there is dot 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 here, which shows you that there can be more than one else if path. So basically, in an if condition like this with multi-way decision, you have one if, one else, which finishes, but in terms of else if, you can have multiple else if statements. So this is the example we just saw. If the marks is greater than or equal to 70, so first of all, we have defined the marks, we have inputted. If it's greater than or equal to 70, we output grade A. Else if it's greater than or equal to 40, we output grade B. Else we output grade F. And note that this is just a fragment of the code. It's not the full program with the int main and all that. So this part here will be inside the int main that you have been writing. Okay, so with this, I think I'm going to, or maybe let me just explain the trace table and then I will stop and then we can work out some examples. So someone asked me last time what's a trace table. So here's what's a trace table. So it's a technique used to test whether there are no logical errors in your program. So it's like dry running your program, where you're going to put in some input values and then go through each line of code and see whether you get the expected output. So what's the basic principle when you draw a trace table? You should be having one colon for each variable. In this scenario, I have just one variable marks. And then you will have the last colon, which is for the output. Whatever is output as text, as value, will be there in this colon. So if you have 4 variables, you will have 4 colons. For example, mark 1, mark 2, mark 3, mark 4. And then I will have a last colon for output. So so considering the previous program, if the mark input is 50, the trace table would be like this. So if we go to the previous program, we have said that the mark input is 50. So this is how it goes. Your program starts execution. It says scene marks, 50 has been input. It will check, is mark greater than or equal to 70? No. Is this true? Is mark greater than or equal to 40? Yes. So it will say output grade B. So you don't have to put the cout and all that, but just whatever is output as in the trace table here. So if you input 40, this is what is output grade B without the codes, without the cout or anything. And then we move further down. So in your branching instruction, so if you have multiple branches in an if construct, if at any point in time we have already gone through one of the branches, then it will ignore all the other branches. So in this scenario, with value 50, it did not go in the first branch. It went in the second branch and output grade B. So it will completely ignore the rest and go out somewhere here and execute the rest of the program. So this is what you have for your trace table. And you can have, so here it asks you to modify the previous program such that now you have more ranges to check, not only A, B, and F, but you have in between A, B, C, D, F with these ranges. So if your mark is between this range, 60 and 7, less than 70 is B, 50 and less than 60 it's C, and so on. So you can try it. Maybe I'm going to ask you to try it now to see whether you have understood or not. Mais ça, alors c'est déjà ici. Okay, so it's already here. C'est un peu bête de vous dire de faire ça. So part of the code is already here. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to So I'm going to stop the lecture as of
Recording
now.
stopped.
So I have stopped recording. And what we are going to do now, we are going to do this example. Write a program which asks the user to enter a number and then displays the category positive, negative, or 0. And then you also have to draw the trace table to check the program when the number 0 has been input. Donc, faites le programme maintenant là, and then I'm going to pinpoint some students to show me their response. C'est bon ça? Okay, so as of now, I have stopped recording. I'm just going to type the question again in the chat room so that everyone has access to it. Et vous allez le faire, and then we are going to discuss. This will also be a good way of testing whether you have understood or not. So before we move on to you doing the question, donc il nous reste encore 30 minutes. So we have time for 1 or 2 questions. Is there any problem, anything not clear that you want me to go through? Any question, Ruzat? Anything not clear? Anything you want me to go through? Because I will give you like so for a question like this, it should be taking not more than 10 minutes. So I give you 10 minutes. No, pas 10 minutes. I give you 7 minutes to work it out. Donc on est 13h02 à 13h10, 8 minutes. So à 13h10, on va voir. I'm going to pinpoint, and then you have to either share your screen or send your answer in the chat room. Okay, so you all have to work on the question. It's in the chat room, and then I'm going to pinpoint someone to show me the answer. Question? You can't see the question? Okay, sorry. I did not post to everyone. So I'm going to type the message again, and I'm going to post it to everyone. Okay, so now you should be seeing it. C'est bon? Voyez la question?
Yes.
Okay. Donc, à 13h10, we are checking. Not done yet. Person qui a complété. Okay, so I have a couple who have raised hands. Okay, so I have seen this name quite often. Kinglish I have seen. Bhuvanesh, yes, please share with us. You will type it or you will share your screen. Okay. Okay, so you can unmute as well and you can talk as well, okay? Okay, so let's see your, so positive is okay, negative is okay. 0 is also okay. So let's see your answer now. Just to share with all the others. So here you go. So you have here, enter the number. See number has been defined as integer. If it's greater than 0, see out positive and then end line, go to the next line. Else if the number is less than 0, see out negative. Else if number equals to 0, see out 0, else invalid. Okay, so here we are checking for positive, negative, 0 and invalid. Okay, because you are assuming here that if the number input is not an integer but something else, I guess.
Yes.
Like a letter or something. I'm not sure whether this will work. Can you just run the program again and just type in letter A, for instance, to see whether we get this invalid code?
No.
You see it give you 0. Voila. So there are statements, there are functions which you can check for whether something is a number or not. So you have, for instance, if is alpha, that checks for alphabetical characters.
Oh, okay.
I don't get it now, but there are functions which can be used to check for something whether it's a digit or not. Okay, so in this way, it's not going to work. So basically, what you have to do, you just have to put the else part, else without the number equals to 0, else number is 0. If you want to check for things like the validity of the number, that is the non-numeric, then there are other functions which will have to be added before this part. Donc ça va tomber dans la partie validation.
Okay. Okay,
Just
thank
put
you.
it down. I can get back to you. I just note down somewhere in terms of how to check when a number is some numeric value. Là, pour le moment, I know there are functions for it, but I'm not able to get the exact name. If I'm not mistaken, it should be in the string library or something. Okay, I will check the functions for you, and then during the lab session, I can share it with you. Can you just show us your screen again? I wanted to also highlight something to the other students, because if in each of your statements you have not included, so just have a look with tout le monde. He says if number is greater than 0, then there is the CR directly without having the curly brackets, okay, without having the braces. So basically, if you have just one line of statement for your if, then it's okay. It's not necessary that you have those braces. If you have more than one statement, then you have to include the braces. Otherwise, the scope of the if will be just for the first line, first statement in the in the block of statements that you have. Okay. So this is one of the reasons why, in general, I advise students, irrespective of whether you just have one statement or a block of statements, to always put those curly brackets. Then you're sure that in terms of scoping, you're not going to have any problem. It doesn't go beyond the scope if ever you need to add more than one line of code. Okay, so this was just for everyone. Be very careful. Otherwise, as it is, the program will work. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, merci.
Anyone else wants to share the answer? They have some variation maybe? Anyone has a variation who wants to share? Okay, I see Salwin. Salwin has put hands down. Roshan, if you want to share what you have done?
Non, c'est presque pareil.
C'est presque pareil. Ok, c'est bon. I had some, so au début là, j'avais quelqu'un qui avait dit que j'allais trop vite. Est-ce que c'est mieux maintenant? Tu arrives à comprendre? Donc, Disha, est-ce que c'est OK à travers l'exemple? Ça va mieux? Disha, you're there? OK. Donc, c'est bon. So, let's proceed. Do you want to work on another example ou alors c'est bon en termes d'explication? So it's good if you, so what you should be doing now, so you have all those lab sheets that you have to work on in terms of, donc let's see what you have. Donc lab sheet 3, est-ce que vous avez, donc là vous avez fait lab sheet 1 et 2, n'est-ce pas? Lab sheet 3, vous n'avez pas fait là où vous avez complété. I'm a bit lost for the moment. Donc est-ce que lab sheet 3 vous avez complété?
No.
No, vous n'avez pas fait lab sheet 3. Okay, so you have quite some questions now. So you are going to do lab sheet 3. Lab sheet 3, it's more computational problems that you have. Mais bien sûr, puisqu'on a déjà fait if then else maintenant, s'il y a des validations, par exemple, à ajouter dans lab sheet 3, feel free to do that. Donc, you will have to include your if statements with that. Okay? Donc là, avec cette explication aujourd'hui, you can do lab sheet 3. Because we have already completed lecture 3, and then you can also start doing lab sheet 4. So that's all in terms of explanation from my side. Unless so, it's open now for any question, any problem that you're having. Donc, si vous avez complété lab sheet 3, vous pouvez procéder vers lab sheet 4-5, which is all about if then else. So let me just have a quick look. Lab sheet 4-5, decision structures. Okay, so you have a couple of questions where you are going to make use of if then else. Et ensuite, quand on aura terminé 4 et 5, à ce moment-là, il y aura le tutorial. So the tutorial is basically over weeks 1 to 5. Donc, il y avait une question en termes de quand est-ce qu'on aura le test for this module. So before I end the session for today, so let me just have a quick look at your module catalog. Donc, your first test will be on week 1 to 5. The scope is week 1 to 5. That's going to be an MCQ. Donc, puisqu'on n'aura pas terminé week 5, which is going to be only start of January, donc le test va être en janvier. Okay? Donc, you will have the full of December to catch up those who have been late, etc. Donc, on n'aura pas de test avant de compléter cette année. Donc, le test va être l'année prochaine qu'on va se voir. Donc, probablement, ça va être vers... attendez, je vais vous dire. Donc, si we are getting back on the 10th, donc 10th, on aura week 5. Donc, ça va être probablement, si tu as lecture on the 18th, donc ça va être 18th of January. Ou alors, non, je peux mettre une semaine après parce qu'on aura le... Just for ensure that you have been able to do the tutorial session, any issues. Donc, probablement, je vais mettre ça fin janvier. Donc, ça va être... we have lecture 1 on Monday and we have labs on Wednesday. Donc, ça, je vais vous informer, mais ça va être soit le 24 ou le 26 janvier. Okay? Donc, déjà, vous avez une idée. You can do your planning. That will be everything related to week 1 to 5. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to cover, j'aurai complété jusqu'à week 5 by next week. So by next week, I've completed jusqu'à week 5 et à ce moment-là, vous pouvez faire votre tutorial. Comme ça, vous êtes bien préparé. Et en janvier, when we are meeting the 10th, the 12th, Donc, if you have any queries, we still have time to clarify. Et ça vous donne assez de temps pour être bien préparé pour le test. So once again, this module is 100% coursework. So every assessment that you are doing has equal importance. Ne regardez pas que ce soit 10%, 15%, ça paraît peu. Mais puisqu'il y aura, all these components are going to be used for the final marking. So it's important that you are consistent, that you give your maximum effort in each of them. Okay. Okay, so now I'm done in terms of explanation. The session is open. Donc, si vous avez des questions, let me check. How can we use virtual van in C++? Why do you want to use virtual van? Virtual van, ça c'est pour ça, non? When you are creating your database.
Yes.
So virtual van, on peut garder both letters and numbers.
Yes, it's like string.
Exactement. So you will make use of an array of characters or a string. Donc, you will define it as string or as an array of characters. Mais pour le moment, je n'ai pas mis l'emphase trop sur array of characters. Par exemple, char, surname, bracket, var. Although you can do it because I haven't covered the topic on arrays yet. Donc, pour le moment, I advise you to use the string variable. Donc, par exemple, c'est surname, string surname to go. There will be slight variations in terms of the commands that you use in the way you define it. So if you define it as a string, then it's different type of manipulation compared to if you define it as an array of characters. Just for your information, if you define something as an array of characters, then this is QC. So you will have to use C style string. If you define it as a string, then this is what has been added to C++, then you will have to use those functions applicable to string. So I haven't really done all this in detail for the moment. This is why, just for simplicity, I'm telling you to stick to just string for the moment. And anyway, we have a topic, I'm not sure whether it's in semester 1, but we have a full topic where we are going to discuss string. No, c'est pas dans semester 1, donc this is in semester 2. Donc dans semester 1, this year, we are going to complete with decision structures. Next year, when we meet, we do a recap sur tout ce qu'on a fait semester 1, including decision structures. Et à ce moment-là, on va faire les loops, do while, and for loop. On va faire aussi files and functions. So that will be for semester 1. Okay, any further question that you have? I've completed. What is LS3? C'est l'arbre 3. Okay, I guess. But for question 4, I've used arrays. What is supposed to be present? Okay, so if you're already at ease with arrays, functions, or other building blocks, it's okay. I'm not telling you not to use them because we haven't yet introduced them. Yes, of course you can use them. But the thing is that I'm here doing the course not just with one batch who has programming skills. I have to bring everyone to the same level. So see, for example, whatever question you have used topics that we have not covered yet, if you're at ease with that, I strongly advise you to do so. And anyway, that's one of the things in terms of why I also gave you those additional links for tutorials. And I'm also encourage you not to stick only to what we do in class. But at the same time, tout le monde n'est pas au même rythme. So I have to ensure that I'm bringing everyone to the same level. This my program is not running. Which program is not running? So I cannot troubleshoot. So you have just pasted the program. I cannot troubleshoot like that. Maybe it's better if you share your screen, then I can troubleshoot with you. Okay, I can already see your mistake. Ucha, so where you have if number is greater than 0. Pourquoi est-ce qu'il y a ce curly brackets out there? Check the syntax. So it's if bracket number greater than 0 and then your curly bracket. You have misplaced your curly brackets. That's why it's not ready. So it's this part I'm talking about. I'm just going to paste it out here so that everyone also sees what's the problem. Donc ça, c'est pas bon. This is not good. It should be this way. Okay, so you see you have put the curly brackets, the braces before the num greater than 0, num equal to 0. And then put an equal, you're checking for similarity. It should be double equal sign. Okay, so I have another question in terms of the tutorial. Strictly speaking, I don't mind having 2 batches at the same time. So, but then it's just in terms of whether I'm able to respond to all of you. So because anyway, this week, last week I have kept like those 4 sessions. So I was there for the 4 sessions. So which one do you prefer? Is the lab sheet 4 for next week? Yes, you have to start already. Though for next week, say lab sheet 3 and lab sheet 4. Since we have already started with conditional statements. So this week, you're supposed to be completing lab sheet 3 and then for next week, at least you have already started with lab sheet 4 because unless you start lab sheet 4, you won't know what are the pain points. So pour le lab session. So what do we do, Wizard? Do I keep strictly that 1 slot for each batch? Or do you prefer the mixed type? Because basically I should be having 1 session for each batch. But to optimize in terms of giving you more time also for troubleshooting, this is why I kept two batches mix, and then I have 2 additional sessions for more questions because for instance on Wednesday à 3 heures, il y avait plusieurs qui étaient là where I had to troubleshoot because they were not able, they were having some problems, and I had to, right, so it was not general problems, but more specific issues that they were having in terms of code blocks, and I had to troubleshoot with them. So I can keep it like this. So if c'est-à-dire where we have these 2 mixed batches, and anyway, I will be there for all the 4 sessions. Donc, s'il y a d'autres problèmes, à ce moment-là, you can join the other sessions. C'est bon? I'm unsure I want to put anything except a number just to get, I want to put anything except a number just to get output invalid. So that's what I was talking about. So that's validation. Just give me a second. I will check something for you and revert back straight away. Okay, so I just got I'm just going to share it with you. So we have is alpha, we check if something is alphanumeric. Okay, so is check if character is alphanumeric. It is all num, and then we have is digit to check if something is a decimal number. We do have is alpha. We have is alpha as well. So I'm just going to send a link to you so you can check for. Going to send a link, so please all of you check this link. You have here some reference in terms of how for the validation. So you want to check, for instance, if you would be checking if something is only a digit. So you would say if is digit, then do whatever sequence, then further check on whether it's greater than, less than 0, etc. Otherwise, you would throw an error message because it's not a digit and you will stop the program. Okay, so let's see. Any further questions? So that was Ovilesh. So I have responded to you. Any other question? Any other question, Wizard?
No.
I think you have a lecture now, right? You have another lecture. Do you have another lecture now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so okay, I'm not going to delay you further. So yes, you can move on to your other sessions. If there are anything which is pressing, anything which is urgent, so the person or persons can just stay back for another 1-2 minutes. Otherwise, the others, yes, please, you can leave, and we are going to meet on Wednesday for your lab session. Ali, bye-bye.
Madam.
Au revoir.
Bye.
Au revoir, madame.
Au revoir.
Over. So for troubleshooting program, I'm not going to do it now because you have another lecture, but if there are any other problems, troubleshooting will be done during the lab sessions because I can't delay you for another lecture. But if there are any other pressing problems, so I'm here